Most people believe horses were brought to America by the Spanish, but what if that's only half the story? Long before cowboys, before recorded human history, horses were born here, evolved here, and then disappeared from this very land. And now, new questions are starting to complicate everything we thought we knew. So what really happened to America's first horses? Chapter 1. America, the original home of horses. Most people believe horses were brought to America by the Spanish, but the truth is, the story of the horse doesn't begin in Europe. It begins right here in North America. From a scientific perspective, this land is the original home of the horse. Around 50 million years ago, small creatures like Eohippus, standing only about 8 to 12 inches tall, lived in the humid forests of North America. They weren't horses as we think of them today, but they were the first step in a long evolutionary journey that would unfold over tens of millions of years. As the climate grew drier and open grasslands began to spread, these early horses were forced to adapt. They evolved larger bodies, longer legs, and most importantly, a single hoof, allowing them to run faster and more efficiently across wide, open terrain. Over many stages of evolution, the genus Equus finally emerged, the direct ancestor of all modern horses we know today. What's remarkable is that long before humans ever recorded history, these horses had already left North America. They migrated into Eurasia of the Bering Land Bridge, a natural corridor that once connected the two continents during the Ice Age. From there, horses spread across the ancient world, becoming deeply tied to the rise of human civilizations. So when Europeans brought horses back to the Americas in the 16th century, it wasn't entirely a new introduction. In a way, it was a return. Horses weren't foreign to this land. They had been part of it for millions of years. And that truth raises a powerful question right from the start. If horses were born here, what exactly happened to them? Chapter 2. The Great Disappearance. But if horses were born and thrived in North America for millions of years, what could have caused them to vanish completely? Around 10,000 to 11,000 years ago, at the end of the Ice Age, North America entered a period of dramatic change. Temperatures rose, glaciers melted, and ecosystems shifted rapidly. And at the same time, many large animals, including horses, gradually disappeared from the continent. To this day, there's no single definitive answer. Most scientists agree it was likely the result of multiple factors working together. Climate change reshaped habitats, affecting food sources and survival conditions. At the same time, the arrival of prehistoric humans, armed with increasingly effective hunting strategies, may have added additional pressure on wild horse populations. Based on current archaeological evidence, the widely accepted view is that horses did go extinct in North America during this period. However, some recent research and perspectives have begun to question whether this disappearance was as absolute as we once believed. Even so, this remains an area of ongoing study and debate. What we do know is this: after that point, North America entered a long stretch of thousands of years without horses. And that absence makes what comes next all the more remarkable. The return of the horse, this time from across the ocean. Chapter 3. The Spanish Reintroduction, 16th century. After thousands of years of absence, horses returned to North America, but not through any natural process. In the 16th century, the Spanish brought horses from Europe to the New World during their expeditions and conquests. On his second voyage in 1493, Christopher Columbus introduced the first horses to the Caribbean. From there, they gradually spread into the mainland through waves of exploration and conquest, most notably under Hernán Cortés during his campaign into Mexico in the early 1500s. These horses largely came from the Iberian Peninsula, shaped by bloodlines such as the Andalusian, Barb, and other Mediterranean-type horses. At first, they were used for warfare, transport, and territorial control. But not all of them remained under human command. Some were lost, abandoned, or escaped, and those horses became the foundation of the first wild herds in North America. Over time, these herds adapted to harsh environments, multiplying and spreading across plains and deserts. They would eventually become the Mustangs, an enduring symbol of the American West. It's important to understand, however, that these were not a new species, but descendants of reintroduced Iberian horses. This moment marked a major turning point in history. Horses had returned to the land where they were first born, but this time, they didn't just exist in the wild. They began forming a new relationship with humans, especially with indigenous cultures, where the story of the horse would take on an entirely new meaning. Chapter 4: Native American Horse Cultures. When horses returned to North America, it didn't just change the landscape, it reshaped the course of human history across the continent. At first, horses spread north from Spanish-controlled regions in Mexico, moving through trade networks, exchanges, and even from animals that had been lost or escaped. By the 17th and 18th centuries, many indigenous tribes, especially across the Great Plains, had rapidly adopted and mastered the use of the horse. What's important to understand is this: after the Ice Age, horses were no longer native to North America, but once reintroduced, they quickly became an inseparable part of life for many indigenous communities. Tribes such as the Comanche, Lakota, and Nez Perce didn't just use horses, they built entire cultures around them. Horses transformed how people hunted, traveled, traded, and even fought. In some cases, certain tribes developed distinct horse types through selective practices and careful management. The Nez Perce, for example, became known for breeding horses with speed, endurance, and distinctive spotted patterns, what would later be recognized as the Appaloosa. While not breeds in the modern registry sense, these horses clearly reflected unique cultural and practical priorities. The relationship between people and horses in indigenous cultures went far beyond utility. It carried deep spiritual meaning. Horses became symbols of freedom, power, and identity. And during this period, horses didn't just return to North America, they became woven into the living story of the people who called this land home. Chapter 5: The Modern Debate. While most scientists agree that horses disappeared from North America at the end of the Ice Age and were later reintroduced by the Spanish, in recent years this story has begun to be viewed with more caution. New genetic studies and analyses have raised questions about whether this complete extinction was as straightforward as we once believed. What's important is this: as of now, there is no widely accepted scientific evidence proving that horses continuously survived in North America after around 10,000 years ago. However, some emerging data, along with perspectives from certain indigenous communities, suggest the history may be more complex, especially when considering factors like migration, adaptation, and the possible survival of small, hard-to-detect populations. In science, questions like these are not unusual. Our understanding of natural history evolves as new evidence comes to light. So rather than drawing absolute conclusions, many researchers take a more cautious approach, relying on what is currently supported while remaining open to the possibility that parts of the story are still incomplete. And that brings us back to the original question, one that's not just about horses, but about how we understand history itself. Did horses truly disappear from North America? Or is the story not fully finished yet? If you found this story valuable, your super thanks is a direct way to support the research behind these documentaries. It truly helps keep this channel going. For those who want to explore this topic further, I've added a few carefully selected books in the description below. They offer deeper historical context and research for anyone interested in the full story behind America's horses.